Happy November, folks. I can't believe the holidays are just a few weeks away. This year has absolutely just flown by, which also means being close to the holidays means we are ready to do reassessments and start to think about what we're going to do with those unredeemed liens in the Illinois tax sale that you participated in. I'm going to keep this short and sweet. You've already read all the details. This is just a reiteration of that. I tend to comprehend things better when I hear them rather than I see them. So for those of you that are like me, that's what this presentation is for. So let's get right started. Okay, so first and foremost, good news. Due to new policies and processes that we incorporated about 3 years ago, if you've been reading our newsletters or updates on Illinois, those sort of correspondence that we put out there, we made a lot of changes internally with regards to the type of liens we select, um, the areas that we're going, you name it. We just made a lot of changes to make sure that we were on top of the economical changes going on in the state of Illinois. And as a result, it takes 3 years to really see how that performance of those changes has occurred. As a result, we are really seeing great performance again in Illinois. So that's good news. This year we have fewer reassessments than we've had in the last 10 years. That's what we want to see in Illinois. We're back to where we need to be. So performances are up, redemptions are up. That's exactly where we need to be. However, reassessments is just a nature of the beast. It's a little different this year because once again legislation has changed. So that's essentially what we're talking about here today. Okay, so first and foremost, reassessment is not something you are obligated to do. It is, however, in your best interest to do so. Uh, Reassessment is essentially setting the table for the potential of foreclosure, but it also opens a lot of doors, and I cannot emphasize that enough. There's a lot that we can do with reassessment, and if we don't do reassessment, those doors are absolutely closed, and they're closed permanently. We can knock on the doors. I'll discuss that a little bit more later. We tell the story of what's going on in the property. We may have bought a occupied home, improved home, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, and at this point it's not occupied and it's boarded up or it's been burned down by the homeowners. As you guys have seen from the take notices that we filed shortly after the initial purchases of the tax liens, the language is really, really strong on those take notices. It says specifically your property has been sold for back taxes. That's a little misleading because the property hasn't been sold. A lien has been placed on the property due to those back taxes. But if you don't understand the laws and you don't understand the policies and procedures and you get something like this in the mail, you react. So this reassessment is very important for us to determine, is it what we bought 2 years ago? And if it's not, then what are our decisions going to be going forward? And the reassessment opens a lot of options for us to make those decisions. Okay, I want to emphasize before we get into the slide that authorizing us to do the reassessments is not in any way, shape, or form an authorization to foreclose on the particular property. All we're doing right now is just looking at the guests of our formal dinner we're putting together here. We're determining who we're going to cook for. In other words, what we're going to foreclose on, and we're going to determine who's uninvited to the party. Those are properties we're not going to foreclose on, and we'll do something else with. We'll find another way of liquidating it by other means, which we'll go through after the reassessments are done. There's things called sale and errors, which is a provision in the state of Illinois. Again, it's kind of a misleading term, but essentially what it is, if that occupied home was burned down, we can then go say to the courts, hey, this is not what we bought at the tax sale. We bought an occupied 3-bedroom, 2-bath home. This is now a burned down house. It's a sale and error. We want our money back. So that's a perfect example of why the reassessments are so important. But it's also very important for you to know that this authorization, because it is now a formal authorization that we require you to sign off on, is not an authorization to foreclose. That will be another authorization we'll do when we get to that phase. All we're doing right now is just trying to understand the story behind this and set the table of what's going to come in the future. Okay, so this is probably the most important slide of the 15 or so slides I have for you here in this short webinar. The laws in Illinois have changed again, but this one I really like. And from the written correspondence that we sent out about a week ago, the feedback has not necessarily been positive. So I really want to drive this home because costs for reassessments have gone up, but uh, it's not something we can avoid, and it is for a very good reason. I really think it's going to open up a lot of additional doors for us that weren't available to us just last year. The new law essentially requires us to physically go up and knock on the door of a foreclosure candidate property. Again, that sounds a little confusing because we're not in the foreclosure process yet. You haven't authorized us to do that, but we're doing the reassessments anyhow. So we might as well go ahead and, since we're at the property, go ahead and do that door knocker now. It will apply. It becomes a postable fee, a cost involved for the foreclosure, and it needs to be done anyhow. But most importantly, if there's an occupant in there, we can negotiate terms to not have to foreclose. We can set up payment plans, which is something we do every day in our office anyhow. We can do contracts for deeds where we avoid the foreclosure process, save a lot of money, go ahead and take ownership of that property, and just leave them in there under terms that they can afford. A lot of you may say, "Oh, well, I don't want to be a landlord or a long distance landlord. I don't want to have a contract for deed on somebody who hasn't been able to pay their taxes." But this is where you really have to trust in the knowledge of that we have. A lot of these people can't afford the huge tax bill that always has to be paid in full. That could be five, six, $10,000, but they can afford a $600 a month rent on a $30,000 property. That's like a 30% net profit. So you really have to let us handle it from this phase. But the important thing here is to understand that being able to knock on these doors, which has caused an increase of the price, obviously it's very risky to do so. So we have to hire a level of professionalism that we haven't had to hire to just drive by and take photos in the past. So the cost is more expensive, but it does apply later on down the road if we choose to foreclose. But the most important thing here is that if we knock on the door, we understand the story and we can find solutions to that situation so we can avoid foreclosure and, more importantly, avoid the costs of foreclosure. So this is a very important change in Illinois legislation, and it's a very positive change. Yes, the cost is a little more, but the results are going to be so much better across the board when we go through this process. Okay, I think I've driven home this pretty hard enough already, but let's just continue to drive this a little harder. Choosing not to do a reassessment is choosing to let your liens become worthless. They're not going to become worthless. However, that is going to be our point of view. Liens can redeem for in Illinois up to 20 years without doing anything. But that's not the path we want or we choose. We want to do reassessments so we can have as many options at our fingertips as possible, even if you don't want to foreclose. Without a reassessment, we're very limited on the options we have and the actions we can take. So the reassessment process is a big one. And some of you are going to say, no, I don't want to do it. I'm just going to ride it out and hope for the best. And that's obviously your choice. You're not obligated to take up on this process. However, each client that has done that in the past will call me 2 years later and say, "Hey, Charles, the redemptions have really slowed down. What's going on? I haven't seen any liens redeem in about a year, maybe 2 years." And I'm going to say, "Well, did you engage in the reassessment process?" "Well, no, I chose not to do that." Well, you tied our hands into what we could do to help liquidate those liens and liquidate the portfolio entirely. And at this point, there's nothing we can do because there are legislative and statutory requirements that we must follow in order to take certain steps and certain actions. So again, you're not obligated to do the reassessments, but it is absolutely in the best interest of your investments to do so. Okay, so part of these costs, this slide's a little confusing, and this part of the process in Illinois is a little confusing. Back in 2009, a lot of legislative changes were made because people were abusing the system and posting far too much to the redemption total. It was almost like an open checkbook. So they changed the laws a lot. So this one can be a little bit confusing. A portion of this reassessment cost, the cost for the title work and the cost for the door knocking, can be posted to redemption total. However, you have to be in the process of engaging in foreclosure for that amount to be posted. So again, we're not engaging in foreclosure yet, so we can't post these costs yet. And in some cases, we're not going to engage, so these costs won't get posted. And to take it to even to a further level, you may engage in foreclosure, but these costs, but then the property is redeemed before these costs are actually posted through the county. So yes, a portion of these costs will be refunded should there be a redemption, but there are definitely some caveats in there that you have to consider and keep in mind. So that's the first part. Payment plans. I mentioned earlier we expect that this door knocking is going to be hugely successful for us this year. We think it's going to have a huge impact on us being able to set up payment plans, set up contracts for deed, uh, that sort of thing. So we can essentially avoid foreclosure, or if we go into foreclosure, we can post all these costs to a payment plan option for the occupant, the homeowner, the renter, whoever happens to be in the property. So the reassessment cost will be added to whatever that total is, uh, plus an additional 25% on top of that. So there is some good news in this increase in reassessment costs because we do feel that you're going to get a lot more back because we're going to set up a lot more payment plans. And we're going to tack on 25% of your total reassessment cost into that. So you'll get all of that back uh, when we do those door knockers and get into the process. Okay, so this is probably my pet peeve slide, if you will. Don't try to figure this out on your own, and don't be a Google View genius. Obviously, a lot of our investors are savvy investors, and they use tools on the internet just like we use tools on the internet. Um, some of our investors are real estate agents, and they feel that their knowledge in selling retail properties in whatever neighborhoods they live in is comparable to tax distress real estate in the state of Illinois. This can be very dangerous. I actually sat on a panel, I guess about 3 months ago, for the Five Star Institute, discussing this very topic and how uh, using the internet as a tool is a good thing, but it can also be a very dangerous thing. You make assumptions and you make decisions on pictures that were taken 3 years ago by somebody driving around with a car with a bunch of fancy cameras on it, and hoping that the GPS is capturing the right property. I can tell you, time and time again, we've seen where they've caught the wrong property. They caught the vacant lot next door, or the vacant lot was the property. So don't be your own uh, decision maker in this process. First of all, we cannot use Google Pictures to uh, find a cause for sale and error, i.e. the reassessments. We have to go and say, okay, we went to the property, we took a picture. When we bought the lien, it was a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. Now it's burned down. Here's a picture dated December 28th, 2017. We want to file a cause for sale and error because this is not what we bought. We cannot do that with Google Pictures. Furthermore, you may look at those Google pictures and say, oh, well, that property isn't marketable or that property isn't sellable um, based on your experience. Again, we work in a distressed world, not a retail world. We have a vast number of networks and resources we work with to liquidate what you may think is a non-marketable property. So doing nothing is absolutely the worst thing you can possibly do. Uh, follow our direction and our recommendations, and your investments will do very well. This phase of the process can become a little scary because it's been quiet for 2 years. You've had redemption checks come in. You've maybe reinvested those. You maybe have just let those add up into your accounts, and now you have some really hard decisions to make. The really hard decisions aren't until we're done with the reassessments. All we're doing right now is just making sure that what we bought is what it was when we bought it, and trying to force as many redemptions through the pipelines as we possibly can. So doing your own Google research is dangerous, and I don't recommend it. So here's a very simple slide of what we're doing here. Essentially, we're taking pictures of the property and we're knocking on the doors. We're posting signs or notices on those properties. Uh, that's that's the first step in a legal process. Uh, then we're going to pull the title reports, mortgage information. The uncover next of kin slide here or button here is sort of in the wrong spot. That should be under pull legal title reports. Why are we involving the next of kin? Because a lot of the times they don't realize their parents who are on fixed incomes are under these kind of situations. The parents are too proud. This happens a lot. And if we notify the next of kin, we can arrange payment plans. We can get those taxes redeemed, and that just moves one of those decisions off the platter. So that's why we uncover next of kin and contact them as well. We arrange payment plans. So when we do those door knockers and we do those notifications, we'll set up payment plans for them to redeem their taxes and pay their taxes off. It may still require foreclosure because they may not be able to afford the monthly terms between now and the time that you have to make a decision to foreclose. But we'll add all of that in, and I'll add all of that together, as well as incentivize you with a good positive return on the payment plans. Your leverage for payment is obviously foreclosure of the property. So we may still have to foreclose, but we're not putting anybody on the streets. We're offering them fair terms, and we're also offering you a good profit on the option. If we can't arrange payment plans, we'll arrange to go ahead and foreclose, or just essentially, buy the property, if you will, for what's owed in the taxes, so we can circumvent the tax foreclosure process. That saves some money as well. That provides us with the ability to offer lease options, which is also, we call them contracts for deeds as well. Sell the property. It might have a renter tenant in there already that wants to own it or just wants to continue renting it. Again, reassessment opens doors that normally would not be open for us. We're going to identify problematic properties, i.e. that 3-bedroom, 2-bath house that has now been burned down, so we can qualify it for sale and heirs. And essentially that's it. We're going to do all of this between now and, say, January 15th. And then we're going to have about another 30 days to make decisions on what are the next steps for each lien. Do we foreclose? Do we file sale and heir? Do we reach out to next of kin? Have we reached out to next of kin? All of that's going to happen behind the scenes. And then we're going to make decisions together on which ones we think we should foreclose on, which ones have potential for contract for deed, and so on. So that is, again, the purpose and the importance of reassessments. All right, so frequently asked questions. I'm just going to allow this slide to run for as long as it takes for you to pause the presentation and be able to read through this slide. Obviously, every investor has different questions involving this process. So these are the most frequently asked. By all means, reach out to us. We have investors that apologize because they think their question is not a very bright question. There are no stupid questions. There's only stupid answers. This is obviously a very important as well as convoluted process. That's what we're here for, to answer your questions and make you feel comfortable about the decisions you're making. We always stress the more knowledgeable an investor, the more profitable the investor. So we want to make sure that you are comfortable with everything every step of the way. So read through these frequently asked questions. If it brings up more, pause the presentation and write those questions down, and email us or give us a call, and we'll be happy to address those with you. All right, that's it, folks. Again, the foreclosure process is a very uh, detailed, uh, difficult, if you will, process in the state of Illinois. So we don't want to muddy your decisions with all of that right now. We only want to focus on the reassessments and the importance of the reassessments. Once we have those done, or as those are being done, we'll then get into a longer, unfortunately, much more detailed presentation on the foreclosure process in Illinois. We also call it a prove up process. So will provide you a lot more information on the different options, the potentials, that sort of thing, and how to engage or not engage through our Harbor platform system where all of your account information is. We'll set it all up through there. You'll have pictures of the property, you'll have descriptions. It'll say if we were successful on knocking on the door, if we've set up a payment plan, etc. It's way too much information to give you all the reassessment details and the foreclosure information in one presentation. So we're only focusing on the importance of doing reassessments now and getting those out of the way so we can prepare for the next steps. Again, this is not an authorization to foreclose. This is an authorization to reassess. Yes, we're pulling title reports and doing door knockers, which then becomes part of the foreclosure process, but we're not there yet. Thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, again, please do not hesitate to contact us. The more knowledgeable you are, the better off you're going to be, the better off PIP is going to be. We work based on performance. We want your investments to perform, and this is how it's done. Thank you again, and we'll talk to you soon.